This is kind of going to be an informal little session, and we want to talk about SCAPs and all that goes with it, and kind of follow up on anything that you might have from the previous presentation this morning. You all have a green folder.
Well, actually, it's every color in the world, but they should all have a folder.
Mine's
Yeah.
yellow.
Okay, good.
Excuse me, mine's pretty.
Yeah, mine is too. There has a color.
Pull out the one first sheet that says, with the X across the top, and it says Sunday celebration in the absence of a priest.
And I just want to clarify, we need one. I just want to clarify that I'm here because I do this SCAP training with the lay people in your parish. So I'm not here to try to tell you guys as deacons what to do, but I'm just giving you what I know I tell the lay people. Many times they're going to come to you, and you're going to do the SCAP in your parish, but it might be a weekend when you're not there. So they're going to come to you and say, this is what I learned, and I just want to make sure I'm doing it correctly, and what else can you help me? You might be the one that writes the reflection that lets them give it. So that's why I'm here. So.
And this is kind of an informal discussion, so if you have questions as we go, ask them, okay? Just want to go through the prescribed leader of the Sunday worship. The absence of a priest is a deacon. In the absence of a deacon, a lay person, and this is what Ruth was talking about. These people, these lay people in the different parishes, especially the outlying parishes, some of the mission churches, especially are specially trained to do this, okay? It's not just anybody that gets up and does one of these things.
And I do have a list of who, the bishop has asked me to keep a list of who has been trained, and I did go around to the diocese, to the parishes last year. So I've been, I think I haven't been up to the northern part of the state yet, but Bob and I will put that together and send it out to you, so you know who in your parish has had the formation. And we've done some in Spanish too, so.
There's actually a couple of different books that we'll go over in a minute, but this is the new one, Sunday Celebration in the Absence of the Priest. It's much smaller. This is the English and Spanish edition.
Yeah, this English and Spanish edition, which some of you may have in your parish, is the old English. The Spanish is good.
Okay.
Then they decided to update it to the change in the Roman Missal. So this one is just English. No, they just have English. And then they kept the Spanish. They didn't, yeah.
Well, there was no retranslation of the
Exactly,
Spanish.
but they could have done the whole book, but they didn't. So you could buy this one right now from USCC for really inexpensive. And then this one is more. But I would suggest if you don't have a copy, if you're English speaking and you don't have this in your parish for you to use, I'm going to pass around a roll and a piece of paper. You can put your name and email. Bob and I will order them for you and get them to you, okay? So, I mean, some people want their own, but the parish should also have a copy, and that's what I told the lay leaders. So, if you're doing simply Spanish, this is still what we're using at this point, okay? So I'll pass that around. If you don't have it, just put your name and your... And, you know, the bishop is concerned. We are less and less priests and less deacons, to be honest, too. I mean, a lot of our deacons are retiring, so he does want to make sure that there's at least one or two people in each parish that have received a formation.
This is kind of a tangential question,
Yeah.
but with regards to weekday communion services, I know when Bishop Wester was here, that was a conversation.
Yeah.
And we were leaning towards, I think rightly, maybe doing communal celebrations of lauds and/or vespers.
You're getting ahead of us. We are going to talk about that. Absolutely, because we all know that this book is way old, but so we will hang on.
Okay.
We got it.
I want to draw your attention to number 3 on this page. Theological confusion must be carefully avoided so that the service is not equated with the Mass on the SCAP. This is a big deal with the bishops. This is a big deal with our current bishop also. We do not, want confusion, people thinking that this is a mass or any sort of a mass. Neither the deacon nor the lay minister uses the presider's chair. Nothing that is proper to Mass, and particularly the presentation of the gifts and the Eucharistic prayer, is to be inserted into the celebration. That's all a no-no. The rite is celebrated according to the ritual text with no additional prayers or rituals added. I would add one other piece here. Bishop Solis is not changing any of the things that were in place as far as the wearing of clerics under Bishop Wester. Bishop Wester was very particular about the wearing of clerics and the fact that the deacons should not wear them very many places to avoid confusion with being a priest. This can present a problem when you're doing a SCAP where you are presiding. And it's probably something that should be discussed with your pastor as to what you should wear, whether it's street clothes in your alb, underneath your alb, or your clerics. Some priests want the deacons and clerics. As long as they're the pastor, listen to them, okay? If you can avoid wearing the cleric for this, you're probably better off because it avoids confusion. And that's the big thing with this.
I tell the lay people to, if it's the custom for the laity to wear an alb, then they can. If not, Sunday clothes are great. This is a discussion for you to have with the pastor. So that's what I tell the lay. And a lot of times when there isn't anything in a directive specifically on it, everybody knows the Green Book of Pastoral Directives, right? The big spiral bound. It's also on the website. That's where this is coming from. If there's nothing in there that specifically says you cannot do this, then a lot of times that means it's left up to the pastor's discretion.
Did you cover that fourth piece? Service of this kind, a SCAP service, is not to be held in a place where a Sunday Mass has already been celebrated. Once in a while, that can present a problem.
Almost all the time.
And it says should,
Yeah,
Yeah.
not must not.
not must not, it says
Pastor's
should.
discretion.
Right.
Exactly, yes.
Use your discretion.
Yeah.
But there's only one SCAP on a Sunday.
I really believe when the bishops put this together, and really people east of the Mississippi have no idea what this is. My brother's from Washington, D.C., he goes, what the heck is that? He has 4 priests at his parish.
Yeah.
You know, and 8, what do you say, 6 deacons, 5 deacons, something like that, yeah? So when it was designed for unusual circumstances or for the missions. But what we're finding in our diocese and many of our Western dioceses, we don't even have priests, even in the parishes, you know. So we are using it more. So it says, you know, you should only do one. Well, that's pretty hard, you know. If your priest gets sick on Friday, you got people coming to church on Saturday night, you got people coming on Sunday. I mean, how are you going to tell, you know, 500 people don't come on Sunday because we're doing our SCAP on Saturday?
Right.
You just can't.
Right.
So, you know, you go for, we tell you what the documents say. So I always say there's the documents, we must know them, we follow them the best we can, but there's reality. There simply is. One more comment on this that I talked to the bishop about. He really doesn't want any manipulation of the order of this either, okay? Stick with the order. And I know it's confusing to people, and if you only do one once in a while, but out in missions it's not a problem because they do it fairly often. But if you are doing it only once in a while, you know, there's a tendency to want to take the offertory, which should be, as we normally do, you know, presentation of the kingdom, and I'm trying to think, collection. It's at the end of it, not, you know, don't mess around with the order, is what he's saying. Follow it the best you can. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Move on to the next handout. It should be in our Sunday celebration in the absence of a priest. Preparation for priests, deacons, lay leaders, and all God's people. And just kind of run through this quickly. SCAP does not replace the Sunday celebration of the Eucharist, and it's not the ideal solution for this, nor should it be used because somebody wants some time off and we'll just do a SCAP today. It's not the purpose of a SCAP. May a lay person celebrate a SCAP? Yes, in the absence of both a priest and a deacon, a trained lay person may celebrate a SCAP, where Holy Communion is also included in the communion service, is included in the celebration. Deacon or lay person does not sit in the presider's chair, the priest's chair, and a lay person who celebrates a SCAP preach. Tough one. In the Diocese of Salt Lake City, a lay person may read a homily that has been provided by the pastor, read a reflection from sources that the pastor has approved, or prepare a reflection on their own that has been approved by the pastor.
That's the layperson.
That's the lay
It's
person.
not you, but that's the layperson.
But
You can also have silence. Have someone read the gospel and then have a couple of minutes of
Right.
quiet reflection.
just moments of silent reflection. What does a lay leader, well, we already talked about the lay leader. Holy Communion must Holy Communion be distributed at a SCAP? No. It's an option. And especially if it is something that has come up quickly, the priest is sick, called out of town, something like this, and there are not enough consecrated hosts to fully serve the community, then the communion service portion should be struck from the SCAP. Okay? Scripture readings, obviously use the readings of the day for the Sunday. Songs are appropriate, we'll get to that. Ruth's got a whole sheet that's in this file that we'll talk about towards the end. Should SCAP be used in place of a weekday mass? The answer is no. And that we'll talk about this when we get done with the Sunday portion of this, because it is a little bit different on the weekdays, but it is not on the weekday, it is not a SCAP. All right, it's a liturgy of the word. The SCAP approved by the Vatican. Okay, difference between Holy Communion and Sunday Eucharist, we know that. When should SCAP be celebrated? They're occasional services.
And that kind of goes back to our directive saying one per weekend.
One per, yeah, and one per Sunday.
Yeah.
What is the liturgy of the hours? The liturgy hours has, since ancient times, been the church's way of praying without ceasing in union with Christ. This is the morning prayer of the liturgy of the hours is the first, is the approved and the service that we should be doing. That is in this book. There are three of them. We'll run through all three of them in a minute here next. But morning prayer is what we should be using for SCAP. Most of us were trained on the liturgy of the word, which is also in here, and is different than morning prayer. And of course, there's also one for evening prayer in here too.
Again, I think because of the way it was originally designed for these missions and small rural parishes where they don't have a priest every Sunday, a community doing it that way would become familiar with the liturgy of the hours and be comfortable. I know at my parish at St. John's, if Dale or Paul tried to do a liturgy of the hours on Sunday morning at 8:30, people would be looking at him like, we have no idea what we're doing. Plus, the best for a liturgy of the hours is to have a prepared worship aid so people know what to do, and that can't happen the night before, and you can't print that many. So again, it's the preferred way. Just so you know that, but it's in our diocese at this point, it's a little unrealistic at many times. Unless you know your pastor's going to be gone and he cannot find anyone to take his place and he has to go out of town, and you know ahead of time, then you might offer one SCAP, because like here, in my parish, they could go to Blessed Sacrament, they could go to Thomas More. Can't do that in Park City. Where are they gonna go? You're stuck. What are you gonna do in Monticello? You're stuck. But, you know, so there's, just be aware that's the preferred. If you could do it, great, but in reality, probably. Because I think for most of you, except for a couple of smaller, coming from our, you know, from Window or from Monticello, you've got a priest, you know he's going to be there, all of a sudden he calls and he's sick the night before. What are you going to do? That's the only time I think y'all will really be doing it on a regular basis. How many have done a SCAP since they were ordained? Okay, good. That's good. That's better than the last time. So,
Yeah.
good, so you're familiar with it. Good.
Some of us haven't done too many of them,
Yeah.
fortunately.
But I think it's more and more with our less priests, and they cannot find someone to take their place.
Right.
Okay.
So anyway, that's basically some of the guidelines, and we'll get in through this, we'll run through the book very quickly to do this. The next piece in here is things that have been prepared. This is the announcement before
yeah.
Mass. And this is, these are sample announcements before Mass.
Yeah.
We want the people to understand it is unfortunately that Sunday Mass cannot be celebrated in this church today since Father so-and-so is unavailable for this particular reason. So forth. But it talks about, it gears people up so that they're not thinking, well, this is, you know, Sunday Mass. It is not Sunday Mass.
It's going to become pretty obvious when you don't process in, and you know you're sitting in a chair. You go up and you're not sitting in. You know they're going to tell pretty soon. But I know many deacons after Mass still get, "Thank you, Father. That was a wonderful homily." You know. So these are just suggestions, but some, if you've got the time to plan ahead, you can do that. You can make announcements and you can put it in the bulletin. If not, at least it gives you something. And if you don't say this is part of leading it, have the lector or an usher go up and make the announcement prior also. Just so people are on the same page. I have a funny story when Dale did one at St. Peter. We got all the way through. You explained everything. You followed the book. You did everything. And then this little old lady at the end goes, "I don't know what was going on. Is it over?" I mean, she had no idea she could. But she went up and received communion. But it was confusing because it hadn't been done very often. So people are going to be confused.
So there seems to be a difference here, though, it's saying in this announcement that they don't have to do anything that Sunday. They can go home and pray by themselves.
They can go home and pray by
So I always thought the
themselves.
SCAP was the gathering, that was your obligation.
Well, this will count as it. That's what you said, but it's not required. That's exactly it.
Okay. Any question? The next piece is in there. There are two of them, one in English and one in Spanish. And it talks about the order of the Sunday celebration in the absence of a priest, morning prayer without communion, evening prayer with Holy Communion, and morning prayer with Holy Communion, and the rite of distribution of Holy Communion outside of Mass, which is a weekly communion service.
So it's just a little comparative piece to kind of get a feel for the order and the difference between it and Mass.
It's just a good reference piece. And we've given it to you in English and in Spanish to use. It's basically the same. And the last, well, not the last piece, but
This now, since we talked about this.
yeah, we can do this. Let's talk about the preferred is to do,
Oh, no, you can't record you because
I'm not that tall.
You're so much taller.
Morning prayer. This is morning prayer, as it should be done. There is and this is all the prayers. This is kind of a standard format, and you have to you'll have to do some preparation going into this to to fill in the readings and things like this for this particular Sunday. This would be the preferred way to do this. It will be, as Ruth said, if you only do SCAPs occasionally, it'll be confusing to the people there because chances are they are not used to morning prayer that we are. So they will have no idea what's going on. Then, of course, afterwards there is the evening prayer, and then you get into the third section, which is the communion service of the Word. That's the appendix.
It's a liturgy of the Word with distribution of.
And
There
celebration
you go, with Holy Communion.
of the liturgy of the Word with communion. This is the one that we were probably originally trained on a long time ago. This is the one that people are more familiar with. It's a little closer to the format of the Mass. Probably that's a good alternative to use because people, the prayers will be a little more familiar to them. It's just that there are fewer of them than are in the Mass. Okay? So use your discretion on that. There is There is a nice piece in each one of these sections that gives you an outline of what is in this. If you're doing morning prayer, here's just a suggestion from us to avoid confusion. And I think it relates to what Scott was talking about. If you're doing a SCAP on Sunday, and you do a liturgy of the Word with communion, during the weekday, we're not to use the SCAP format.
Yeah, this is, the bishops have never changed it, but this is still a book that you would use. And it, I think it was last published and last done anything with in 1976. Year I graduated from high school, yeah.
Wow.
But this is very, it's a basic communion service, and it looks very much like a Mass. Has an act of contrition and all kinds of things, where this doesn't look anything like it. But this is specifically for Sunday. I don't know why they've never done anything with this. It just happened. So people still ask me, and I said, on a weekday, this is what you use. On a Sunday, this is what you use. So.
I'm going to pass these out now. We have available to us, the diocese has a subscription to the
They're
e-breviary.
in the packet?
Well, it's on your packet, but use the new one, because what I did,
This has notes.
I made notes in this.
Okay, so this one in addition to the one.
I want to walk through the notes with you.
That is different, this is a different one.
When I'm called to do,
So, I mean, this doesn't supersede our daily prayer.
No, he is suggesting this, if you don't want to do a communion service,
Oh,
right,
he's suggesting, because he's done this at Park City and it works really well, because your weekday people generally are the same people that come to Mass every day. So if you wanted to introduce the liturgy of the Word with communion, this would be the way to do it.
this would be the way to do it. We have available to us the e-breviary, which is the daily liturgy of the hours. All right, we have all of the hours available to us for the day: morning prayer, day prayer, evening prayer, so forth, etc. We can print them. All right. I get these 2 weeks out, and they come to me in a PDF form. I am more than happy if you call me to pull a day or a prayer. This is the prayers for the specific day of the week and the specific hour. I'll pull this, send it to you electronically. You can print it in the best way that it'll come to you, in printable in pamphlet form on both sides. Paul?
Most folks might know this, you can get the app on your iPad.
Right, and the iBridge here,
Right.
but you can't print from that.
Well, I can, but that's okay. Yeah.
Well, you pay a bigger fee than I do. I get that one too, but I use that. for
Well, I mean,
my
just an air,
Yeah.
convert to PDF.
But-
But it's good to know that you can.
The nice about this one is it comes in booklet form, it's all ready to go.
Yeah.
Plus-
Similar when we go on pilgrimages,
Yes.
we can deal with.
Plus, you can get this in Spanish.
Perfect.
But the
Plus-
thing is only 2 weeks, you can
If
only
you
get 2
know-
weeks out. Yeah.
Speaking of pilgrimages and things like this, if you have, and I've done this for Mark on several times, when he's done special things, he'll say, I need something, and it might be a month in advance, thank you very much, by the way. I can call New York, and they'll send it to me.
Oh, will they?
Oh,
Even
yeah.
ahead of time, yes.
That's not a problem.
Oh, that's good, that's good to know.
So if you are planning a trip or a pilgrimage or something like that, we will be more than happy to send you.
That would
to
save us tons of time.
Save us tons
Save
of
us a lot of time because.
Yes.
And you can use this format on a regular, daily basis. If you're going to include a communion service with this, I would make a copy of this. Matter of fact, it's in your file. And this is the one that is taking the morning prayer with a communion service, and you have to do a little juggling with this one. All right. In the fact that you need to insert in here the readings for the day. This is the readings for the day for the hour. You can use that one. But then we go to the intercessions right afterwards. We have the Lord's Prayer, and then we have the communion rite, which comes after those readings. The communion rite, the communion service is not part of this. So you have to do a little planning ahead as to where to insert it, and I have marked in this copy where all of that goes. And that relates to this. If you do it once or twice, it becomes very easy to pick up. And you just have to note to yourself and guide the people through. Generally, when I have to sub for the priest sick or something like this on a weekday, I utilize this. Most of the people are somewhat familiar with it because they are regulars, so they've been to one or two of these. And rather than trying to do it as, obviously, the monks or as we do it in one side and the other, so forth, we just have everybody read it together. So we're all reading the morning prayer. That's the way I would handle the weekday thing. There, it's more of a prayer. Takes about the same time as Mass, about 20, 25 minutes. And it does have a communion service. And that's what the people are coming on the daily scale for, is to go to communion. And you give them a prayer form to do that. It's just a nice format for the day. Any questions on that? Does that answer your question, Scott?
It does, thank you.
And that's just a suggestion, all right? And obviously,
I have a question.
yeah, Doug.
So you go through the daily readings for a weekday and from the lectionary, but then you do not do the gospel reading, is that right?
You do the gospel reading. The gospel canticle for morning prayer is the canticle of Zechariah. That's done after communion. According to this, it's called the Thanksgiving prayer after communion. So you come back and do that last.
Okay, so.
Okay, so
after
you
the-
would go you would put in your daily reading,